Welcome everybody to this episode of The Discarded Compass, and you are more than welcome, and thank you so much for all the brilliant feedback and emails and the support. We really appreciate it. And this episode we have the wonderful Tim Cliss. And welcome, Tim. How are you, sir?
Yeah, very well, thanks.
Tim, how did this all start? It started somewhere in your youth. You had some experience going up a mountain of some sort, was it?
It wasn't my youth. Well, no, I mean, relative to my age now, it was my youth.
Okay.
What was I can't, what age would I be? 32. I didn't feel it was youth. I had 2 kids, so I didn't feel like youth really then, but relatively.
So what happened?
What happened? I was walking up, I was on an outdoor pursuits trip. I was a PE teacher, and I took 110 year 7 first year secondary school kids camping in the Peak District near Derbyshire, near Matlock, and we were on a hike. We were hiking across the peak, and we were walking up a wooded. They're not called tours, but it's like a rocky outcrop, but it's all wooded. So you can't actually see the rocks until you actually get in the woods as you climb up. And after that, you can't say what happened. But my description after was time stopped. I knew the rocks and the trees, and they knew me. There was no rocks and trees, there was no me. And it didn't last for any time. It was not, there was no, it wasn't like I stopped and then there was this, it wasn't even a moment. That's how it was. But it was completely overwhelming. And yeah, I just carried on as though nothing had happened. But I couldn't, it was like nothing else had ever happened like that. So then that just set me off. What the hell was that all about? And from then on, you could say I was a seeker. But of course, I've been a seeker the rest of my life anyway, but just in a different way. But with that one experience, I wanted to know, because it was undeniably true. That's the other aspect of it. I could have just treated it as an aberration. You know, it was some kind of psychic or even spiritual. But do you know, I had no sense of that at all. All it was absolutely as it is, really. And then the rest of my life, what are called normal life, was never quite the same afterwards, because it had a tinge of, well, this isn't actually how it is. And yet it is, but I kind of forgot. I kind of pushed it back. I remember I came back and I tried to tell people about it, because it was so awesome. It was... It was so incredible. I just thought people will be amazed. Or this is what's happened. No fucker was interested. I mean at any level, not even a shred of interest. It was like I tell them, this is what happened, and it was like it just went straight through them. Nothing touched, and they just carried on talking about whatever they were talking about. I didn't get a single positive. I didn't even get negative responses. It was ignored. And I went, wow, this is just for, this is just for me. It's not to be shared. So I guess I stopped sharing that experience straight away. But it wouldn't go away.
So you had no support, sort of.
No, because I didn't have any. I had no
benchmark. Yeah,
I had no spiritual background or the irony. There is some irony. I was actually about to become an RE teacher as a crocked old PE teacher. I was about to start teaching religion. And so once I started teaching religion, and then I learned a bit about Hinduism and Buddhism, and so I found Zen, and then I found Advaita, and I sort of, it was like it was whispering to me. It wasn't what it was like. It seems now really obvious that every human being's experience of this is utterly unique. And there is a great myth that everyone will experience. There is this true experience, but there isn't a true experience. Experience is through a character, through a human being. And that, although there were echoes of it, oh, that's kind of it, but not it. That's kind of it, but that hints at it, but that's not really. So I never found anything that was on the money until I heard Lisa Cairns, believe it or not. It was Lisa Cairns I first heard. And then I heard, and then I was obsessed. I'd found this word, non-duality. And then I went, oh, well, I've got to listen to every single human being who ever has spoken about this. And then I can understand it, because it felt that through understanding, then I would, it would make sense. That's really, I was trying to make sense of it. And of course I was a seeker of the truth, because what that experience told me was that that was true and this isn't. I think that's the biggest problem with what's usually called awakening experiences, is they hint at, oh, I've had a glimpse of the truth of reality. This isn't. That is. And that's the biggest, I mean, of course, what more seeking energy could you want than saying, this isn't the truth? This isn't real. That was, and I could find it again. And, that's the seeker.
But what was the difference between that experience and this apparent that isn't really an enlightened state?
No, this isn't a state. This has nothing to do with this is not experiential in any way.
So there's no difference between the two? None.
Because experiences are just what they are,
So there's no experience, or really, Tim, is what you're saying. What's that like? I mean, it's hard for people to seek or to understand this.
It's exactly like it is when there's an experiencer. When there's me having the experience, you know what I can say. And it's utterly different. Because the only difference is that there isn't this illusory sense of being the possessor of experience, the claimer of experience. The claiming stops. And that's all I was, it seems. I was just simply the claiming of life for myself. And there's no, that just
the claiming has always been, you could say, false anyway. So
this is not a realization. I've realized fuck all. It's absolutely the loss of the possibility that I could ever realize. It's the worst thing that could ever happen to me, which is that there's no longer the sense of I could know the truth. I could realize reality. I could awaken. I could become enlightened. It's the total death, the annihilation of all of those possibilities. That's what we're speaking of. It's the shittest thing ever for self to hear. But that is the only freedom, because while there is this sense of I could, it's possible, I may, if I dream, if I work, if I, whatever stories I tell about the possibility that I could get nearer, that I was there and then I could get back.
So is there much of a sense of time for you there, like in what happens?
No, But yet, yes, time is exactly the same as it was before, apparent in the appearance. So yeah, it appears exactly the same. There isn't anything. This is so what I'm speaking of is it's almost the antithesis of that awakening experience, which was wow beyond wow. It was unspeakably incredible. What I'm speaking of is absolutely ordinary in a way that I would have detested as myself, because I was always seeking the extraordinary. I wanted more of that. I wanted more of those experiences. I didn't want this mundane, everyday, simply awesome life. I mean, the simplicity is the awesomeness, whereas I was always seeking the incredible. So, I mean, there isn't anything much more ironic than it seems in the story. The awakening was the catalyst that led to, in the story, that led to the death of the one who might awaken.
So after the experience, there was some sort of seeking to understand what happened, right?
Massively so.
So
yeah.
when did that clear up for you as such? I was going to say.
It was like it started really slowly. I was trying to avoid. Well, once I realized no one wanted to hear, I stopped looking. But then, just, you know how life is, I found things that seemed to bring it back up, and then it just started to escalate and snowball, and then it became all consuming.
Like, I think they say with the Eastern traditions, they say you're in the tiger's mouth as such.
Yeah, and that really is, that's not a bad analogy. I quite like the it's like this is very topical. It's like it's like catching the virus, and you can be asymptomatic for quite a long time, but this is a virus that will kill you. It's just you just don't know how and when the symptoms will start to appear.
And there are no customers for this. And it takes me back to when you had that experience, you're trying to explain that to the people you're on the hike with. I mean, there are literally no customers for this. Nobody really wants to know about it, Tim, do they? I mean,
it's tiny. I mean, now this has become, you could say this is what I do. I speak about this.
You do this full time, right?
Full time. I mean, that's quite a joke. I don't do
Excuse the pun.
I don't do it full time. I speak about it for, it was once a week, then twice a week, then 3 or 4 times a week, maybe.
Is there a passion for it? Like, is there some sort, like I was listening to other speakers and they say, it's just the most fascinating subject they can talk about. Yet, you have realization, you get to the point of, there's nobody there. And the next thing, it kicks off again and people start talking about it. It's a never ending story, isn't it?
Well, the thing is, it is just another story. That's the other thing. That's liberating in itself. So I don't take this seriously. I don't take myself seriously. I don't take this message seriously. It's not, life isn't serious. All of the seriousness of life is because my life is a serious business. That can sound heartless, but it's quite the opposite. It's really much more compassionate than when I'm totally obsessed with the seriousness of my life.
So this awakening for anyone can really have some sort of a change apparently in their life,
Well, I've read stories and heard people speak of their life changed very little. I would be absolutely amazed if that's the case. What motivates most human beings to do and be in the way that their life is lived is through me, is in relation to me.
Mm-hmm.
If that stops appearing, that energy of this is my life, then most of the motivation to do what that human being was doing is likely not to turn up along with themselves. The energy to be good, to be conscientious, to work hard, to achieve, to get somewhere, to become the human, to be fulfilled. All of the common aims that selves have. We're talking about the death of those.
The old ideas and programmings can end, yeah?
Yeah, I mean, interestingly, habitual stuff doesn't seem to end, but because a lot of habits are just literally, I think, just conditioned bodily rather than in relation to self. What seemed to fall away here was motivation to work and be a good citizen. No, that's dead as shit. Good person. No. And all of that is, I mean, it may well be that as a human being, I'm a better human being now in others' eyes. But do you know what really falls away and stops appearing is caring about that.
Yeah, that false reference point, which everything reflects onto that.
How will my behavior reflect on me?
Yeah, and yet you keep reflecting to it, and it's not there. I mean, no wonder you get caught in it because it isn't there.
Yeah, and that's why this is a compassionate message. It can sound nihilistic. It can sound as though it doesn't really care, but it's quite the opposite. It's very. I mean, it is ruthless. There's no doubt about that. It is uncompromisingly ruthless, and but it is about love, because this is already absolutely complete and whole as it is, and there is no greater love than that. So it's very to call it love may sound wrong, but it's a love that isn't about right and wrong, and what love tends to be is the antithesis of hate. But of course, this is a love that doesn't exclude this, because everything is already included, and that this is all there is. And there's an inclusiveness about that does feel like love.
It's like there's everything is allowed, maybe.
Absolutely, everything is already allowed without anyone needing to allow it.
But that should be enough for anyone want to chase this. Yeah,
you would think. See, you can speak. The trouble with this is when the self hears this message, there are bits of this message that self hears and goes, "Oh shit, that's beautiful, man."
Yeah.
And then there's the other bits of it, and they go, "Fuck off."
Yeah.
Because I want the love, but I don't want the death of hope. I don't want the the death of time. I need time to fulfill my dreams and my hopes and my fantasies.
Or the greatest one, free will. Does that mean I'll have no free will? People will say,
Well, the thing is, it doesn't mean you won't have free will. No, there is just no one having free will. There's
free will, but nobody has it.
That's worse. That's much worse. Is there appearance of free will? Yeah, of course there is. You go to the coffee shop and there's 6 cakes, and it appears that you choose coffee, and then you go, "Oh no, I'll have carrot cake," and of course that happens. But the illusion is that you're doing the choosing. That's all. That's the lie of free will. Not that there isn't free will appearing. This is, by the way,
you can't choose before you choose, can you? I mean,
no, exactly. So there isn't. It's just that the choosing is a real natural thing that happens. I mean, it's ridiculously ordinary, because because you can't get. People want to debate free will with me because they think, they've heard non-duality is that there's no free will. And then I go, "Oh no, free will's fine." And they go, "What do you mean? What do you mean?" And I went, "Of course there's free will. You can choose a cake, can't you?"
And you've got someone that doesn't want free will. I mean, it's like,
Yeah, because there's neither anyone to have free will or to not have free will.
Interesting point. Just one thing that came up for me. I don't have many questions really rehearsed for these talks, and I like it to be like that. But one thing that came up was the idea of someone having free will and choosing things in their life, and then meeting non-duality, right? And if you introduce this message to these people that haven't been introduced to non-duality, they will say, well, of course there's a me. This is ridiculous. You are crazy.
Yeah.
But, there are so many holes in that idea. I mean, you were probably up to the age of 3, you weren't there.
Yeah. And for me, the most obvious, of course, everyone knows this about what is the most appealing thing about a 1-year-old child when it's just started toddling and hasn't got language yet, but is still communicating, can, ask for things and is very interacting, but there is no sense of self. Because I think I heard Tony Parsons say this loads of times, that it's around 18 months. And I think it is between 18 months and 2 years that's when the self forms. I don't know if you know, but I've got a 2-year-old son. So I've been monitoring the progress of his self very closely. And the first thing, I like it because he doesn't say I at all. He says my, which is, it's the sweetest self you could ever hear, isn't it? So my want that, my do that. My and it's so self-absorbed. And of course, all the tantrums that come 2.5 to 3.5, that is when self is just, it's like expanding exponentially in its trying to control and possess its own little tiny part of the world, And so tantrums galore. They're just about to start when he wants something. I want it. And I don't know what I was going to say now.
Yeah,
I've just started thinking of him.
Yeah, leading off that. It does matter. Even when you're asleep, you're not there. But if someone bangs the window, you wake up.
Well, yeah, in a very real way. Self does die every night. Yeah.
Yeah.
How that's overlooked by self. Self doesn't even want to even go near that. And yet it's if you say to any self, they'll go, oh yeah, I suppose that's true. But self doesn't hear it and self doesn't go near it, that it utterly disappears.
And they love that. They love being sleep. They love being in deep sleep.
Well, self longs for sleep. That's the irony of this whole message is this is absolutely longed for by self and desperately and terribly feared, because it's, so I long for the loss of myself, for the non-appearance of myself, because I give myself such a hard time. And I long for rest and peace from that energy of constantly seeking, constantly checking, constantly, so I need to reward myself, then I berate myself, and then I reward myself, and all of that energy is just utterly exhausting. So self longs for sleep more than anything, but is terrified. And the only thing that compensates self about going into deep sleep is that I'll wake up again in the morning. That illusion of time is necessary for self to be okay with going to sleep.
That's interesting. Never thought of that. I never thought of that part of it. The time thing,
Yeah, because time and self are one and the same illusion of continuity. I would say the biggest change in perception is exactly the same, but what has changed is the sense that this is continuous, that life continues, that life goes on, that life happened, is happening, and will happen. There's no sense of that at all.
So there's nothing happening and happening at the same time, or?
Well, the only thing that is happening is what's happening. Nothing happening isn't happening. Yeah. There is. So yeah. I know you've heard that a million times, and I know, but no, and I say it as well. But it can sound like, okay, so you're aware, whereas me, as a self, I'm just aware of what's happening. But you, because you've died, you're now aware of nothing happening as well.
Yeah.
Fuck off. No.
Yeah.
There's no awareness of nothing happening. It's fucking nothing happening. There's no awareness of that. There's no seeing that. You can't hear it and feel it. It's not. That's why it's unspeakable, because we're talking about emptiness, nothingness, silence, just as words attempting to describe the unchanging, really.
There's a feeling here sometimes of it being somehow a potentiality, you know.
Potentiality.
Yeah.
I don't want to sound too nihilistic, but really this is the death of potentiality. There's no more potential. Because this is the end and the beginning, you know, so there isn't anything to come after this. And potentiality always is absolutely adored by self, because potentiality is possibility and is hope and is potential. So this could appear as anything, which is, don't get me wrong, that is true, but it's also not true, because there is only this appearance already. So in that sense, there's no potential.
Yet everything appears. It's like it ends.
Well, the only thing that appears is what's appearing, though. You know, there isn't what will potentially appear. Is there? I mean, I am only stating the bleeding obvious. It's just
no idea.
No, but there isn't. Right. What I really mean is there is only what's happening, which is what's happening, which is fucking obvious. And the potentiality is just an idea that appears. As you know, potentiality is an idea. Now, this appearance isn't an idea. It's all that there is. And so then we speak about it, or we think about it, and they're all ideas.
And usually, I touched on another talk. It was kind of like, you know, there has to be an end and a start and an end to everything. Mm-hmm. How did this all start, or did it start? Yeah. It's hard to comprehend that it never started or will finish. That's very
hard. No, that's that. Well, that is what we're speaking of. That's why you've heard lots of speakers talk about this as not knowing.
Yeah.
Well, that's why it's called. That's why it's spoken of as not knowing. It's not knowing and not caring that there's not knowing, rather than needing to know. Because really, the death of self is the death of the need to know. Because there's only I need to know, and there's a reason I need to know, because if I know, then I'll be, number one, I'll be special, because there's not many people know the truth. There's a reason why conspiracy theories are so popular, because they set me apart as special straight away.
They find
I'm not going with the herd. I don't follow those sheep. I know the truth. You know, there's nothing self likes more than that shit. This is nothing to do with knowing the truth. This is that truth is unknowable. Reality is unknowable. And in that is the peace that passes all understanding. There in the phrase, it actually says it. It's fuck all to do with understanding, as Jesus said.
Did he say that?
That's what he said.
I know. I'm sure he did, you know.
I'm paraphrasing.
Yeah.
No, but it is past understanding.
Yeah.
How that feels now is that what he meant by that, or what is meant by that, is understanding is superfluous. It's irrelevant. It makes no. There is understanding, and understanding can be obvious. That is simply thought, idea, concept, belief, which has no intrinsic worth or value of any kind.
How does anybody approach this subject? I mean, how could they approach this? What would you say to them?
Well, if you want, I can tell you how I approached it. I read every book I could get. I watched every YouTube I could watch. I listened to every speaker, everyone who had ever mentioned that they were speaking about non-duality, because from that awakening experience, that was the overwhelming sense that there was. So what was out there and what was in here were the same. That was the essence of it, really.
I mean, they wouldn't even be the same, would they? They just
no. There's just no knowing.
Yeah.
But then, okay, yeah, not different. Yeah.
Mm.
So it's not the same, but not different.
And it'd be just like even the one without a second, or
Yeah. Oh, that's Sailor Bob. You see,
yeah,
I know who says what, because I really did. I mean, I was obsessed, and so I'm guessing that's what you'll do if this message is heard and it resonates, or woe betide you have an awakening experience, which will be, in comparison with what you've called ordinary life. It's like, oh, I know what I should have said is that it reminded me, I had heard of the veil. There was the illusory veil. Now I had heard of that, and that came to me. I mean, I say I wasn't a spiritual seeker before, and I wasn't, but I had heard there was an illusory veil that could just be lifted. And that is, I did have a sense of that, oh, that's what's happened. It doesn't mean anything, but I did think that.
Has life settled down now for you as such? Has everything sort of naturalized, or after all these awakenings and things, has it somehow normal, or
honestly, I only had that one experience. That fucking did me. I know. Look how long it took in the story.
How long did it take?
I mean, I'm saying no time. Well, I'm 59 now, so from 32 to 59.
It's long enough.
That's quite a long. You could say that's stewing in the pot a long time, isn't it?
Mm.
But I mean, all stories just don't mean anything at all. There is no.
And I would think there's less suffering for someone after this happens as such.
I would think, yeah. That's why I speak about it.
Do you really? Yeah, because it does alleviate the sufferer.
Oh yeah, without a doubt, he's dead.
The story, yeah.
He's well, I say he's dead. He never lived, so it's like it's worse than dead. I mean, don't get me wrong. There was a real mourning. The tears just wouldn't stop when it was undeniable that it wasn't that Tim had died. It was that Tim never was. That what I'd call myself, not Tim, but much more intimate than my name. Because the whole sense of self is much more intimate than what, anything superficial. So it's much more intimate than body. And so the loss of it shouldn't be underestimated. So although nothing is lost, I cried for how much effort had been made for Tim to be okay with himself. For all in vain. I cried for how much effort he tried to make himself good enough to heal himself, to, the thousands of self-help books, not thousands, hundreds of self-help books, all the therapy, all the trying to make himself okay.
Mm-hmm.
Good enough, really. And
it was after the experience, life is still there,
Yeah, I will say. I spoke about the experience, that awakening experience. For me now, if I think about it in the story, all that was the catalyst to become a seeker. I mean, I didn't have any more awakenings. Honestly, I didn't. There were no other. Nothing else like that ever happened again in the story. In the next 25 years, nothing at all, not even remotely, not even, at a lower level, or, less dramatic, and that's not, because I think one of the problems that, one of the pitfalls of being a seeker is I'm waiting until I have that awakening experience as a constant state, that's how life will be. Well, I tell you what, if life was like that, you're not going to get the washing done. You're not going to get, you're not going to get, you know, in a state of bliss like this, some kind of permanent state of bliss. And a lot of spiritual teachings tend to reinforce that idea, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And what I'm speaking of is not a state at all. I don't feel it's all states just come and go. And what we're speaking of is it just can't be described. I haven't got a word for this deafening silence, empty fullness, changeless changing. Any two opposites, you know, this light darkness, this anything that we've taken to be opposites, then everything is present.
It's like we live in a contrast, don't we? The mind,
Yeah,
objectifying everything, and it's historic, and
and it's interesting because the ability to work in contrast just naturally just appears in the same way. It's just never believed ever again.
It's never believed. That's so there are contrasts.
Oh yeah,
they're not
of course.
That's very hard to comprehend.
Contrasts are exactly the same as before.
But it's very hard to comprehend that there's objectifying, but there's no objectifier. I mean,
yeah, exactly that.
It's like
that is exactly. I mean, that's about as close as you're going to get. There is objectifying. Yeah, of course. There appears to be objects.
See, that's the end point, isn't it? That's very hard to describe.
We can't
very hard to bring someone beyond that. I mean,
because of course, objects. There can only be objects if there's an objectifier. But that's me claiming the objects as mine as the objectifier. There is no objectifier.
But there are objects.
Yeah, seemingly, yeah. Just the same. I know.
I'm trying to be the devil's advocate here again.
Well, the thing is, I mean, imagine me saying that there aren't objects and then I just go and pick up the cup.
Yeah, I mean, or a hot cup. I mean, you're going to know pretty quick if you pick up a hot poker whether it's an object or not.
Exactly, yeah.
No?
I mean, yeah, we are talking that there is absolutely no, I mean, really, there's no difference at all in what we'd call perceptual experience or experiential experience. It's exactly the same, but it's empty of the one who claims it as I'm having it.
Yeah.
You're not having it, John.
I know. I know.
There is just having it. No one having it. And do you know, it's so much better. It's so much better having it and it not being yours. It's much better.
But is there a difference in having it and no one having it?
Well, no, there isn't anyone having it. This is already having. This is had. This is, you know, there's no getting. This is already got. It needs.
But it's quite astonishing, though, Tim. You know, if you take someone's cruise missile, I mean, you're going to be in trouble because they think you got their, you know, they want it back, you know. I mean, you know, there's going to be trouble.
And of course, I don't. You know? If I go into a shop and I'll get and claim there's no ownership, you know, I just take what I want. Surprisingly, I don't know. Yeah, you don't. I think I'm less likely to do rash or what you'd call radical or non-conformist behavior. Because it's you don't care whether you conform or not, but of course
I don't care.
A lot of what we call rebellion or rebellious is all me. That's all me wanting to be a rebel.
Yeah, but leading back to what you said there previously about being authentic was what I heard you say was sort of like there's an authentic life happening and it's naturally programmed. However, the setup is there's natural programming, you know?
Yeah.
But that might pertain to like here, it took off in different directions. I was seeking for a couple of decades and it went off in different directions.
Yeah.
It just left the spiritual arena totally. And I do it for fun because I love it. But anything can happen. It doesn't mean you're going to sit in a rock all your life. I mean, you can turn out to be it doesn't mean I kind of think there's a natural programming in the body. There's a natural programming of this. The setup is there for.
Without a doubt. I mean, I don't even necessarily think of it as programming. It's just like the tree doesn't have to have a self to, you know, to grow the leaves. It's exactly the same as a
and certain trees will grow in certain areas, you know. So, you know, you could have a tree that's actually planted in the wrong area, but it goes, oh yeah, okay, I get it now. You know, it's an oak tree, not a, you know, it should be growing in a field, not up a mountain. Yeah. There's a sort of an adjustment, you know.
Yeah, there can be.
Yeah. So really, there's an authenticity that can happen, you know.
Do you know
it's programming drops.
Really, it's now when there's no difference between authentic and inauthentic anymore. It's that this is authentic in a way that would be unimaginable to me, because I'm always looking for, okay, what's real and unreal, and making that distinction, what's authentic and inauthentic, what's facade and what's the real, you know, the genuine article. Well, there is no such thing. You know, especially
looking for authenticity is
because of course nature, but I'm really talking in relation to human beings. So and what self does is go, well, he's authentic, but she's totally false, and it's all front and it's all facade and completely inauthentic. And I'm not interested in authentic. I want authenticity. And again, that's all for me. Well, there is nothing less authentic about someone, a human being who is putting on a, you know, say they've got a smile every day when inside they're, you know, feeling like total shit. That's not inauthentic. That's authentically putting on a front, you know. That's it's all. I think what I mean to say is it's all innocent, and that can be, well, that can't be denied. Whereas I would always think some were guilty and some were innocent, you know, as human beings. So I can look at all animals as innocent and trees as innocent and the clouds as innocent, but human beings, because they have a self and I have a self, and I'm the chooser, and I can choose to be authentic or inauthentic, then so can they. And from that root is all the judgment of some people are authentic and others are not. I don't mean that I like liars. I don't mean that I like people who are. But it's all innocent. It really is.
So coming off of that, what the word is coming up for me is freedom, you know. People do talk and scream about freedom and fight for freedom and kill for freedom and all sorts of these weird goings on for freedom, you know. I kind of think people do want to be free, really. What would you think of that?
Yeah, self doesn't want freedom at all. No. Self wants control and power. Self wants to be autonomous, and autonomous means I do what I like, and I have control, and I manage my little universe.
Even in spiritual freedom, though, you know, the freedom of spirituality I'd be pertaining to.
Well, the whole notion of spiritual freedom in usually in spirituality is terribly bounded. It's not a freedom at all. It's always within the limits of whatever school or religion or context that you've studied that aspect of spiritual freedom. I don't have any sense that I'm speaking about spirit. That, you know, one of the great dualities is that there's material and spiritual, and there's a dichotomy, you know, there's a split. Or that you know, within the material is a spiritual essence, you know, a life essence that is spiritual. You know, with human beings, we call it soul or spirit. this whole notion that there's something hidden, because what spiritual really says is this can't be it. There's much more to life than can be perceived, and there's no sense of that at all. That for me, that's the real essence of the message of non-duality, is that what we've called spiritual and what we've called material are not two. Of all the not twos, that's the one that, because that really does kill seeking. That's dead as a dodo. Right, it's blown right out of the water. This is the most spiritual that this can get. And then what are you going to look for after that? There's nothing. And it's also the death of that awakening experience as well. That just becomes just another memory. So I can remember scoring a hat trick in a cup semi-final, and I can remember that awakening experience. One is no more significant than the other. Whereas what I'd done with the awakening is, of course, one was mundane. It was in a football match, a very physical, material reality. And the other one was of a whole new spiritual dimension that maybe I could access, and maybe I could live there. I'm coming back to a question you asked me ages ago, and I just thought I never answered it. You said about getting accustomed to this, or acclimatized, or grounded in this, and really what happened, what seemed to take a long time to get used to. Again, we're just storytelling, but in the story, it took a long time to get used to everything being empty. The emptiness was overwhelming. It was just, and I desperately wanted to communicate that to somebody. I wanted to scream at everyone. Can you not see it? Can you not, because everything was, and over time, it just, I don't know, you just get used to it. I guess the emptiness just becomes, it's like a normalizing. So on one sense, I mean, how contradictory. On one level, I say there's no time, and on the other say I get used to it. Well, that is how this is. You stop worrying about contradicting yourself.
Everybody's looking to understand, and for for everything to fit into the box, and it's
because a lot of people still think that I understand, or that Tony understands, or Jim understands, or Lisa understands, or Kenneth understands, or whoever else you've listened to, and you go, oh, if only I had that understanding. Well, if you listen to them, they're all fucking saying, this has nothing to do with understanding. I don't understand. I don't know what I'm talking about. You could say that everyone who speaks about this, they have their own flavor, and it's spoken as a character speaks. But the not knowing, which is the not understanding, is the same thing. is the absolute core of the message. That's the bit, and it's so not heard by virtually no seekers hear that fucking bit. They hear the peace, the love, any juice, the not knowing, the not understanding, the not getting it. No one virtually, it's like dismissed. Yeah, but you've got it. Have you not been listening? No, there is no one to get it. There's no getting this. It's got.
Yeah, there's an energy. There's an energy to get something. We're programmed to get things. Yeah. To understand things. Actually, Tim, could I actually? There's actually never has been any understanding anyway, has there?
No, just the illusion. Yeah. No, the illusion. What we're calling me is that illusion of knowing and understanding. Yeah.
So anytime anybody has ever understood something or thought they understood something, they never have.
No. Isn't that lovely? I mean, it is dreadful. It's dreadful, but well, you could say absolutely no, they haven't. But relatively, of course, they have. Again, it's contradictory, because relatively they have. You know, if you came up with a new, I don't know, I'm not a I'm not a, you know, astrophysicist, but if you came up with a new theory for black holes, and you know, you worked out this unbelievably complex mathematical theorem for it, I mean, yeah, hats off. Looks like knowledge, looks like understanding, means fuck all. But that doesn't mean to say you can't appreciate, because I do have an appreciation for science that I didn't have. What spirituality tends to do is then poo-poo science, you know, because science is material knowledge.
In a way, yeah.
Seemingly.
Yeah.
And of course, spiritual knowledge is much superior, higher. Mm-hmm. It's on a higher plane altogether, you know. Mm-hmm. And of course, self loves that shit.
Yeah.
But I tell you what, you know, that spirituality won't, you know, deliver you a Zoom meeting. But whoever made this laptop, you know, it's quite incredible, isn't it? On the relatively, yeah.
And it actually makes it even more incredible. I mean, it's incredible that we can talk like this. I appreciate technology, because only for it, I wouldn't have heard any of these teachings and stuff.
No,
you know.
Well, nor me. Yeah, I mean, YouTube. Yeah. I mean, YouTube. I mean, if you're a seeker, I mean, it's quite dreadful as well, because you can be an addict, and you know, most people use the internet. Most blokes just use it for pornography. But if you get bitten by this message, then pornography comes a poor second place to watching Tony Parsons videos.
Talking about addictions, that's like an extreme form of self, isn't it? Though, really. Yeah.
And this message can definitely be addictive.
But it's a different sort of. There's never an ending point to the seeking. It's never resolved. You know.
No.
But it's the ultimate thing that's never resolved.
Well, it's much worse.
It's worse. Because, can you call it worse, though? I mean,
no, this is worse, because this has no resolution.
But does it feel worse for you? I mean,
no, it's much better.
I don't know what.
But what I mean is
totally lost there.
No, for a seeker, it's, you know, it's worse than, you know, the seeking can't be resolved. The seeming resolution is that there is no resolution, because this isn't a resolution. This isn't an end point. You know, this isn't a landing place. This isn't this is just the impossibility of resolution.
But that's not an end either.
No.
Understanding that.
No, because this doesn't.
Is there anything? Can I say? Is anything you say, Tim? Is it true? It just come into my mind. It's like, you know,
I'll answer as honestly as I can, John.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I don't mean that in like.
No, I know. I get you. I get it. So, is it true?
I'm a liar. Like, I mean, you know.
No, it's not true, as in any sort of absolute way. No, not at all.
Yeah.
No, not a word of it. Isn't that?
Doesn't mean it's not true either, does it?
No, not at all. Yeah. There is no true and untrue.
So what is it? What? I'm just trying to see. I have to use contrast to try and.
Well, yeah, and I get that, and it just makes me think of U.G. Krishnamurti, because he always just said,
love him, the barking dog. Yeah.
Just a dog barking. Yeah. So you just said, so what is this? Well, it's Tim barking.
Yeah.
Or Tim singing.
Yeah.
Well, how lovely, you know. Seemingly, in this in this play, we get to sing and dance for a bit.
Yeah.
And that is it, really, you know.
Yet it feels so fascinating. Even now, there's like an energy. It's like a,
Yeah. And
you know, it's not dull. This is not dull, is it? I mean, this is.
God, how is this dull?
No.
How is life dull? I mean, life is dull for me because I say it's dull. That's why it's dull.
Yeah.
And I say life could be much more exciting than it is. Well, the truth is, then this is the truth. Now, this is the truth, John. I'm taking the piss.
I'm going to.
Yeah, this is the truth.
I'm listening. I'm all ears.
Yeah, this is the truth.
Tell me.
It couldn't be. It couldn't be more exciting than it is. For the very fucking obvious reason. It is as it is, and there's shit all else. Now, we are talking about the most direct, obvious fact that every human being is absolutely aware of, but will always deny. Self will always deny that there is no other time. There is no other moment. There is no other life. There is no other happening. There is nothing else other than just simply this, however boring, mundane, exciting, blissful, hideous, terrifying, however, but this is the lot. We all know it. It's utterly undeniable.
The open secret, I think. Was it Tony?
Absolutely, that's it. Yeah, that's a great phrase.
Yeah, it's a great phrase. Yeah, Tim.
The secret is that there is no secret. There aren't any human beings who don't know this.
Human beings, yeah. It's like we're all verbs. It's like I like the analogy of electricity, in light bulbs, and it's all different shapes and sizes. Yet electricity, we can never know what electricity is.
No,
that's the nearest I can come of describing it for myself,
Yeah. Well, I love it. We pretend that we know electricity just like we pretend we know human beings.
Yeah.
And of course, the biggest pretense of all is I know myself. That's the pretense. It's just not true. There's nothing to know. No.
Tim, I really enjoyed the conversation with you. It's been.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah,
it's been a pleasure,
really,
John.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
I've had quite a long day, so I'm a little bit hysterical, slightly. So I'm sorry if I got a bit sweary there. I can do that.
You're told you're allowed to.
I'm allowed.
It actually adds a bit of color,
Yeah.
That's what we call it here. You're a bit of color.
Yeah, I like a bit of color.
A bit of color. Tim Cliss, I'm just going to leave your details in the description, and you've got a website, timclissthis.com.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to put that in the description as well.
Oh, and lovely, thanks.
You do retreats, Tim, and online meetings or something?
So I did a retreat the weekend before last, which was great. That was the first time I'd done that. And then, and I do weekly meetings on a Thursday at 7 p.m.
Okay, and they can get in contact with you.
And the details of that are on my Facebook page, on the website. And and if anybody wants to, if you go to the website, then you can email me, and you can. Oh, there's a newsletter as well. I have a monthly newsletter. How funny!
Love it.
All the news about what's happening.
About what's happening or not happening. Yeah. Love it. Thanks so much, Tim.
I really enjoyed it, John. Real nice to meet you.
Cheers, bud.
Cheers.
Take care.
And you.